Hello and welcome. One of the most popular vlogging cameras or cameras for starting out YouTube this year is, and it's recommended by many of the YouTube outlets there that help you get started, is the Sony ZV E10. So based on their recommendations and not being a big camera buff or being in the photography business or the videography business, I decided to pick up on their recommendations and use that to get started. Now, in the last couple of weeks, I've picked up another camera so I can do overhead videos for reviews and basically just another angle to my videos to make them a little bit more interesting and not dull, just you staring at my face most of the time. But I have found in the meantime a few gripes that I've had with the Sony camera. I've looked at some other stuff online and other people have shared similar sentiments as well. So I'll share here with you today 4 things that I found to be troubling with the Sony ZV E10. And how, some of them can be solved. Other things, maybe there's other solutions. I'm still hunting for the best here, but at least for these 4 problems, I found the solutions and I'll share those with you here. And at the end, I'll just cover off 2 things that I found to be quite just annoyances with this camera. But overall, I'm very pleased with the picture quality and overall what this camera can capture is just stunning for the kit package that you get for $1,000 Canadian. It is just a stunning starter kit, and I would not have expected to be able to achieve something like this. So here is the 4 things. Let's jump right in. All right, so the first gripe I have with this camera is that once you have the micro HDMI plugged in as well as the USB-C, which I like to do so that it's plugged in and charging at all times, and when you have the flipped up screen, and if you see here, it basically ends up blocking half of the viewfinder. So it's tiny to begin with. When you have it mounted on your tripod and you're just trying to get a sense of what you're looking at, or if you're recording the right scene and everything is in frame, it isn't quite as useful as I would like for it to be. There are field monitors and stuff that you can get to replace this. I'll add some links for that in the description below. The second issue I've had with the Sony ZV E10 camera is that when you've got the USB-C power plugged into the camera and you've got the battery inside and you're shooting, after maybe 20 to 30 minutes, depending on the environment and the ambient temperature of the room, the device gives a overheat warning and simply shuts off. And at that point, you have to let the device rest. The camera needs to cool down for a little bit before it can return back and be fully operational. Or a pretty easy solution to that, which is to get a dummy battery. So let me show you here what that solution looks like. So if I remove this USB-C cable, and here's the battery compartment down below. If I open it, I've got a battery in here. You could pop out this battery, replace this teeny tiny battery, which by the way, if you're shooting 4K content at 30 FPS, you won't be able to get more than perhaps 45 minutes, I believe, of full shooting time, continuous shooting time. So with this popped open, so the solution to the battery issue when you're charging and causing this device to overheat is to simply not reuse the battery. Get yourself a dummy battery like this. This one is from Neewer on Amazon, I believe for around $25 Canadian. And this will basically replace the battery. You slide it into the camera like so. Make sure it's locked into place. And the key thing you have to make sure is that this little flap or latch rather on the camera on the battery compartment needs to be flipped open so you can route the cable through, as this door needs to be closed in order for the camera to function and to record. So it takes a little bit of force, press it down, slide the lock in, and voila. You should be able to use this running the device endlessly. And you should be able to do continuous shooting without any trouble. Gripe number 3 that I've had with this camera so far, shooting and making videos for YouTube, is that the audio capture on these cameras are actually atrocious. I've gone through 3 different microphones before I ended up purchasing an external DAC or an audio capture input device. If we go here to the 3rd page, on video, I'm not a big fan of these menu dials. It's a little bit clunky. But anyway, if you navigate to the 2nd page, so you've got audio recording here. As you can see, I've completely turned audio recording off on this camera. The reason being is if I turn it on, then the audio record level, introduces a lot of background noise into the camera. And I've tried using the aux port on here. So there is, keep in mind, an auxiliary input port here. The other thing I had problems with is, if I can zoom in a little bit better, let's see if we can get the camera to focus. These flaps, for one, are very, very fragile. So this one states that it has plug-in power. So despite that being there, and keep in mind, this is the microphone flap. It's got a nice little microphone logo on it. But if you don't pay attention, it's easy to mistake that for this port here, which is actually, if you can see there, the headphone port. So make sure you don't make that mistake. I initially made that mistake too, only to look at it and realize that, hey, you know what? There's another panel here that is actually the the microphone port. So that has been my other gripe. So what I've ended up resorting to, and I spent quite a bit of time testing, hundreds of video clips just testing, and time wasted trying to get the audio issues on this camera to resolve. So what I've done is turn the audio level all the way down to 0 and tried using just the external mic's output or preamp to provide the audio input, but that did not produce a sufficient result. So I ended up turning this all the way off. So I've gone here now, I use audio recording completely to off. So essentially my video cameras are just that, they are just video cameras. I'm not using them for audio at all. And then finally, number 4, another issue I've had with this camera is that you cannot use this without the battery, as I mentioned earlier, and with just the USB-C powering the device. The battery needs to be installed in the camera at all times. All right, 2 more minor annoyances that I want to cover with this camera that I've experienced in trying to make videos for YouTube here. So let me jump into the menu. Apologize if the video is a little shaky. So if I go into the first page, and I believe it's screen number focus IAF, yes. So this is one of the promised Sony settings that Sony is supposed to be light years ahead on with their camera technology, is the face and eye focus, autofocus. Turn this to on. However, I found that if you are shooting in, there's a few different modes that this camera supports. If you are shooting in the 24p mode, then that option becomes available and you can adjust it. I found on my other camera that if I'm shooting in 30p mode, which is 4K 30, that option is no longer available. Perhaps I need to set that option first before returning to this menu and then choosing my resolution. So that was a little bit puzzling at first, but the solution is to go into and page number 2, let's go, or 4, excuse me, page number 4, go to face and eye autofocus settings, set this to on. Yes, on please. And then you can set the subject detection to human, which will then have 3 layers of autofocus. So the way that the Sony autofocus works is first it will look at tracking your eyes. If it cannot track your eyes, it will try to track your face. If it cannot track your face, then it will resort to the lowest form, which is object detection. Then go into your video settings, go down to your file format, and now you should be able to select 4K as well as the record setting. I like to use 30p 4K 30 at 60 megabits per second. 100 megabits does give you a bigger file size, but I found that it's very negligible in terms of the quality difference. So why not save some space on those precious SD cards and use 30p 60M to capture my videos. And lastly, I'd like to point out, one annoyance that I have with this camera is, despite our phones that are half the price of this device being able to capture 4K 60 frames per second, I am actually surprised that high-end cameras like this, I would consider this to be a high-end camera, at least for my purposes, are not capable of capturing 4K 60 frames per second. And, I would have just thought that would be the baseline you would want to have on YouTube to have really good video quality, but alas, that isn't the case. And looking in the marketplace to get a 4K capable camera like this that can do 60 frames per second, you're looking at least about $2,000 to $2,500. All right, conclusion time. After looking at some of the issues that I've had with Sony ZV E10 getting started and making videos for YouTube's, I believe there's a solution to be found in each of those scenarios. I presented some quick solutions here. I'll have the information about those solutions also in the links below in the description. And if you find any of this useful, please let me know. If you found any additional solutions, do share them in the comments for everybody to benefit. Thank you.